The question is, are you confident about what happens after you die?
Yeah, very much so. I personally, I think yes, there is another way that leads to something wonderful. I'll be honest with you. We can't see it, but I believe it's all around us.
I'm confident. I don't know what happens, but I'm confident that, for me anyway, life eternal, as I talk about it, isn't an ongoing life. It's something we experience here, and we journey in here, and it continues with the confidence in the loving God for whom we came and for whom we shall return.
What would you say has been one of the biggest endings in your life?
The death of my second wife after a 10-year journey with Alzheimer's. And so, yeah, that was a challenging ending, but it was a good ending as well for her, of being able to just journey in the next stage of her life. And she gave me the freedom to move on with mine. She did say to me many times, move on, mourn me, but find something and someone new to be with.
Hi everyone, and welcome to episode 5, the ending of our theme about endings. We hope that you've had time to consider the role of endings in your own life. And maybe in listening to our innerVIVID team, you've realised that there are lots of common elements when humans deal with death, grief and loss. Maybe it's good to know that we're not alone in this. So, how do we finish this theme? We have a big question today, and here it is.
Have you experienced the death of someone closer? Did your concept of what is after death help you in that experience?
The nearest person to me that's died is my father, who died a number of years ago. It was a really, I'm honest, complicated death. And it was complicated because he had suffered from Alzheimer's and dementia. And by the time he died, I think most of us in the family were glad he died. Because I don't think his life was giving, I don't think his life was rich for himself. I don't think it was bringing life to anyone else in the family. Did the Christian tradition help me in this? I think it does at one level, because I come from a Christian family, and the way we wanted to honour his life was through a Christian funeral. And a Christian funeral, I think, is a really powerful vehicle for us to, in a sense, to engage in different bits of emotion that you need to engage with as you go through a process. So we found that, I think, helpful. It was a powerful moment I flew back over to England. We're in a churchyard that I'd known since I had been a child. You know, we had the service in the church, and then the body's carried out to the churchyard and was buried. And I kind of think, yes, that's actually, it's enabled me to actually properly say farewell to my father, and to know, in a sense, where my father is even. You know, there's a body in the ground there. I kind of find that reassuring. And if I do go back, and when I do go back to England, I do try and just actually go past that place. Yeah.
The last death I experienced of someone close to me would have been when I was about 11 years old. My nonno passed away, my grandfather. I remember at the time, perhaps maybe having a concept of his soul going to heaven, or at least that's, kind of what I sort of thought at the time. And, I'm a cradle Anglican, so I've grown up in the church. And so I think that part, or I guess having that faith involvement in my life, was what helped me come to that conclusion. And that was certainly what a lot of other people around me were saying, and that was what the priest said at my nonno's funeral. And so I just kind of went, okay, yeah, well, that must be where he's gone. And it's interesting, I guess, to see how now, as I've grown up, and the experiences that have shaped and changed and, transformed me as a person. I think back then I just took that as fact, and I didn't really question it.
So ultimately, I don't really have a concept of what's after death, or I'm sort of agnostic about the concept of what happens after death, in the sense that that question is usually asked, meaning what's the experience for an individual after their own death. I'm entirely agnostic about that. I think where I would go when talking about what happens after death is about what happens in the community of persons when one of those persons dies. And in that sense, what happens after death is a chance for that person's life to be acknowledged, to be respected, to be honored, and to be hallowed. And that what's most helpful about this kind of life after death is when there's a community of persons that can hold the memory of a person in whatever complicated ways that involves, and also a community that can hold the grief of losing a person. So in that sense, I'm not agnostic about life after death, but in the other sense, I'm pretty agnostic.
You know, I was there when my grandmother died. That was a beautiful death. My whole family was there. And we got a sense, I actually don't know if we were annoying or whether that was celebrated by my grandma. I do think she actually loved it. She did love being the centre of people's love. And there was a real work, a communal work in that as well. And the connection that happened amongst us at that time, and our combined love for that person, and also that point where we recognised that this is it. And you know, I had the privilege, there was just a moment, and one of our family members was distracting herself. It was difficult, but she wanted to be there. And I was able to say, just stop what you're doing. It's time to stop. I think we're here. I'm not a doctor, I have no idea how I knew that, but somehow that happened, and she came, and surely enough, my grandmother's breaths were shortly after. And it was palpable. Right? There's so much love in that space and just care.
All of the people that I have lost, who've died close to me, have been Christians, either fully churched or mostly churched, and they've had that promise of an afterlife, if you like, that promise of eternity, and the things that we talk about in our funeral services. So I've always held on to that. I was only talking to somebody today that they showed me the actual last message that their mother left, a 30-second message when she turned 100 years old, saying how she loved God, and a couple of days after she was gone. But I said, well, that's just her, isn't it? The body's not there, but this essence is there. You've got that video, but you also got within you, the soul, if you like, of that person hanging around. So I take great comfort in the fact of that Christian knowledge.
These stories show me that it is an important thing to be with someone as they move towards the ending of their lives. It may not be pretty or easy, but it's important. How do you make it through something like this? What helps when you're going through the anticipation, the loss and the grief of a precious person?
Yeah, I lost my mother 5 years ago. 5 years now, goodness time. And I don't know if this is forceful, but I love transparency, but the people in this room while we're filming were there for that experience. And yes, I think yes, knowing what happens or having my own story of what might happen, because we don't know. That's the thing, we hold on to these stories and these beliefs, but we don't have certainty. So there's always going to be this unknown. There were two things that when I think about that time, really helped me in that space. The first one was with community. I had beautiful people from my work community, my faith community, and my friends and also my family. Like I had people all around me who just loved me and supported me and let me take that journey. And that was incredibly helpful for me to wrestle with what was happening and what was going to happen. And I think I'm always deeply thankful for that. And I think sometimes we underestimate the value of having community and people around us during that time, and how they can just remind us that life will be okay afterwards. As hard as it is, there's good things to come, and there can still be good things even in the midst of those, like grief and loss. I remember like many of them made me feel loved and cared for, and we could still laugh and find joy even in amongst just all of the sadness and the grief.
The first real experience I had of somebody close to me dying was my grandmother. I was in my early 20s, and my grandmother died of a really aggressive form of cancer. And I always had this sense that my grandmother didn't really have a belief system or a faith. But as she was dying, she really did revert to her childhood, and she had this prayer that she was given as a child that she had by her bedside, and that really shocked me. And what really stood out to me was it was her simple faith that made the difference in those last days of her life here on earth. But it's made a lasting impression on me as a person.
I've sat with lots of people as they've died, and I've seen good deaths and not good deaths. As I journeyed with my father as he died, I don't think that was a good death. It was a hard death, and the thing that sustained me in that was not so much my understanding of what did or didn't happen after he died, but the depth of the relationship we'd had all during his life. And so for me, yeah, that's the piece that sustains me. I have got better at sitting with the discomfort or the uncertainty about what happens after we die, because I think we've got so much here and now to love and be part of, that's where I find hope and life and sustenance.
There are some amazingly generous ideas here. Seems like when you really know someone, being with them when their life is ending is a great privilege. Again, it may not always be easy, but everyone seems to agree that there's a rightness to honouring the person and being present for them. Some found joy in their community. Some found comfort and peace in living and loving fully in the here and now. I can't really believe that we asked people this question, but I'm so glad that we did, and very grateful for the stories and insights shared in this episode. Where does spirituality fit into this? For me, this is where the rubber hits the road. How we navigate death, how we imagine with and walk with and love people when they are facing the end. What do you think? For me, I'm looking forward to theme 7. It's called More Than Just Us? We'll see you there.
Are you confident about what happens after you die?
Yes, and I quote that to people. I tell them straight out of the Bible. There'll be no more pain, no more tears, no more suffering. You won't have the same body, but you will recognise each other. You will recognise people who've gone before you. So I am confident, and I try and give that confidence to the people I meet in hospital.
So it's your kind of spirituality that provides you with that confidence.
Most definitely, yeah.
Thank you for that. What do you think? Are you confident about what happens after you die? And And if so, what's the basis for that?
I would say that I am confident a lot of the time, but some of the time I do have questions. I imagine what it could be like based on a lot of things. There's often that sort of ebb and flow to my confidence. But most of the time I do feel quite settled in that I know that there's love, there's peace, it's all going to be good. So I'm looking forward to seeing my people and my animals who I'm living without right now, because they have already gone there. I know they're fine, and until I get there I'll think fondly of them, remember them, and know that they're at peace. But yeah, I'm looking forward to it.